Clara Thorne stood in the middle of the ballroom under the glow of the expensive chandeliers at Ethelred Tower. All of the city's elite were watching as she handed me a silver gift box, smiling with a coldness that I should have seen coming. The guests expected to see a diamond necklace, but when I pulled back the ribbon, I found a stack of divorce papers served in front of everyone. Clara believed she had successfully thrown me out of the family with nothing but a ruined reputation. She thought she was the queen, and I was just a guest she could discard whenever she wanted. She was wrong. Watch until the end, and you will see exactly how I took my seat at the head of the table and made her cry in front of all rich society. Clara Thorne looked like a statue carved from ice. She stood in the center of the ballroom at Ethelred Tower, the city lights of Seattle shimmering behind the floor-to-ceiling glass. She was holding a glass of vintage wine and watching Elena with a look that was both cold and predatory. This was the anniversary gala for Thorne Enterprises, a company that moved information and cargo across the globe with terrifying efficiency. Elena stood nearby, smoothing the fabric of her navy silk gown. For 7 years, she had been married to Clara's son, Julian, and for 7 years, she had felt like a guest in her own life. Elena served as the chief compliance officer for the company, a title Clara had given her to keep her busy with paperwork, but Elena had used that time to learn the inner workings of the empire better than Julian ever could. Julian was standing a few feet away, but he might as well have been on another planet. He kept checking his watch and looking toward the door. Elena tried to touch his hand to offer support, but he flinched and pulled away, complaining that the pressure from the board members was getting to him. Then, the energy in the room shifted. Sloane arrived. She was a marketing director half Elena's age, wearing a dress that was designed to be noticed. She walked straight to Julian and placed a hand on his shoulder, a move that was clearly meant to show the room who really had his attention. Julian didn't stop her. He seemed relieved to have her by his side. Clara stepped to the microphone and silenced the room. She began to speak about family, legacy, and the high standards of the Thorne name. She called Elena to the center of the room. "To my daughter-in-law," Clara said, her voice filled with a fake warmth that made Elena's skin crawl. "You joined this family from a small town with nothing but an accounting degree, and we have tried to make you one of us." Clara signaled to a server who brought forward a heavy, silver-wrapped box. "Open it, Elena. I want everyone here to see how we reward loyalty. If you are enjoying the story, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below where you are watching from." Elena's hands shook as she opened the box. She expected jewelry, perhaps a family heirloom. Instead, she found a stack of legal papers. The bold text at the top read, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." The room was so quiet that Elena could hear her own heart beating. Julian refused to look at her, staring at the floor instead. Clara announced to the crowd that Julian had filed for divorce because of Elena's betrayal of the family reputation. Clara tossed a folder onto the table, spilling photos of Elena meeting a man in a quiet park. Elena knew the man was her brother, who struggled with addiction, but Clara had forbidden any mention of him to protect the family reputation. Julian told her to sign the papers and not make a scene. Elena looked around at the guests who were already whispering about her. She realized she was being discarded. But Clara made one mistake. She thought Elena was just an outsider. She forgot that as the compliance officer, Elena was the only one who knew where the digital skeletons were buried. Elena picked up the papers, held her head high, and walked out into the night with a plan for war. Elena spent the next 48 hours in a room that smelled of old smoke and disappointment. It was a far cry from the silk sheets of the Thorne mansion. She was staying at a small motel on the edge of the city, still wearing her ruined navy gown because she had nothing else. Clara had frozen her bank accounts before Elena had even left the property, leaving her with only the small amount of cash in her purse. She felt a deep sense of loss, not just for her marriage, but for the 7 years she had spent trying to be enough for a man who allowed his mother to destroy her. But by the third day, the sadness turned into a cold, hard focus. She realized that Julian was not just weak. He was a participant in her humiliation. Elena borrowed a laptop from the motel's front desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She knew Julian was lazy and likely used the same password for everything. When she tried to log into the cloud storage where he kept personal files, she was granted access immediately. She began to scroll through folders of golf scores and receipts, but then she found something called Project Chimera. As she opened the spreadsheets, her background in accounting and compliance allowed her to see the truth instantly. Thorne Enterprises was using a shell company to move millions of dollars, and the only name on the documents was Julian's. Clara was smart enough to keep her name off the illegal transfers, effectively making her own son the person who would go to prison if the authorities ever found out. Then Elena found a document from Julian's grandfather, the man who had built the company. It was a legal addition to his will that stated if Julian and Elena were ever to divorce after 5 years of marriage, 15% of the company's voting shares would transfer to Elena. However, there was a catch. She would get nothing if she was proven to be mentally unstable or a criminal. Suddenly, the fake photos and the public accusations made sense. Clara didn't just want Elena out of the family. She needed to destroy Elena's reputation to keep her from gaining a seat on the board of directors. Elena knew she could not fight the Thorne family alone. She searched for Marcus Steele, a man who had a famous rivalry with Clara ever since she had cheated his father out of a major land deal years ago. Elena sent him a simple email explaining that she was the woman who could hand him the Thorne empire. 2 hours later, a luxury black car pulled into the motel parking lot, looking like a spaceship in a junkyard. Marcus Steele stepped out, looking sharp and dangerous. He knocked on the door of room 104, and Elena invited him in. She showed him the laptop screen and the Project Chimera files. Marcus looked at the data with a growing sense of respect. He realized that Clara had fired the first shot, but Elena was about to finish the war. He offered her a place to stay and a team of lawyers to help her clear her name and take back her shares. Elena left the motel that night, leaving her old life in the trash as she prepared for the beginning of her real partnership. Marcus drove Elena to his penthouse in the center of the city, a glass sanctuary that overlooked everything Clara Thorne thought she owned. He told her that he was helping her because Clara had destroyed his father's reputation years ago, and he had waited for the right moment to fight back. Elena realized that Marcus was the partner she actually needed. The next morning, a team of expensive lawyers and investigators arrived. They explained that to win, Elena had to clear her name so she could claim her 15% of the company. Elena's brother, David, was now out of rehab and ready to testify that the secret meetings were purely for his support, not an affair. Marcus's investigators also found receipts and videos proving Julian had been with Sloane for months before the divorce papers were served. While the team worked on the legal side, Marcus insisted that Elena undergo a transformation. He sent in stylists to cut her hair into a sharp, modern style and replaced her wardrobe with structured suits and striking gowns. She was no longer dressing to please Julian. She was dressing to intimidate anyone who stood in her way. As she looked in the mirror, Elena felt the last of her old self disappear. She was ready to stop being the victim and start being the victor. The night of the autumn gala arrived, the same event where Clara expected to finalize a massive merger. Clara was at the center of the room, looking like a queen who had already won the war. Julian was by her side, looking nervous, while Sloane wore a white dress that made her look like a bride-to-be. The room was filled with gossip about Elena being a gold digger who had been kicked out. Suddenly, the doors opened, and the room went silent. Elena walked in wearing a midnight blue velvet gown and diamonds that glittered under the chandeliers. She was leaning on the arm of Marcus Steele, the one man Clara could not ignore. As they walked through the crowd, people who had ignored Elena weeks ago now scrambled to say hello. Clara looked as if she might drop her glass. Elena walked straight up to her and complimented the party, even though she knew Clara was shaking with rage. Clara tried to have security remove her, but Marcus stepped forward and reminded her that if Elena left, the merger talks would end immediately. Clara had no choice but to let them stay. Throughout the evening, Elena moved through the room, talking to board members about Project Chimera and asking questions that made them look at Julian with suspicion. Later, Elena cornered Clara in the quiet of the ladies' room. She told Clara that she knew exactly how much money had been moved to the Cayman accounts, and that she had the evidence to prove Julian was the only one who signed the checks. She explained that Clara was using her own son as a fall guy. Elena gave her a simple choice: drop the lies about the affair and give Elena her shares, or the files would be sent to the federal authorities the next morning. Elena walked out, leaving a terrified Clara alone in the room. She had played her best card, and now she just had to wait for the family empire to crumble. The emergency board meeting at Thorne Enterprises was held in a room made of dark wood and heavy silence. Clara Thorne sat at the head of the table, confident she was about to banish Elena forever. Julian sat next to her, looking pale and unwell. Just as Clara called for a vote to remove Elena from the property, the doors opened. Marcus Steele walked in first, followed by Elena and a trembling Sloane. Clara demanded security remove them, but Elena stepped forward and placed a box of documents on the table. She explained that she was not just a guest. She was now a major shareholder. Elena used the room's smart screen to play the video footage of Julian entering Sloane's apartment months before the divorce was even mentioned. This evidence proved that Julian had breached the marriage contract first. According to the grandfather's legal clause, this immediately triggered the transfer of 15% of the company's voting shares to Elena. The board members whispered among themselves as they realized Elena now held the power to block Clara's plans. But Elena was not finished. She displayed the spreadsheets for Project Chimera, showing the millions of dollars moved into illegal accounts. Julian stared at the screen in horror as he realized his signature was the only one on the documents. Elena pointed out that Clara had purposely used her own son to commit the fraud, leaving him to face the legal consequences alone. Julian turned to his mother, realization dawning on his face that she viewed him as nothing more than a shield. Sloane then stepped forward and played a secret audio recording on her phone. In the recording, Clara's voice was clear as she explained that Julian was weak and would be the one to go to prison if the authorities ever investigated. The board members stood up in disgust and immediately called for a vote of no confidence. Clara was stripped of her power and escorted out of the building by security while Elena watched in silence. In the months that followed, Clara was sentenced to 20 years in prison for her crimes. Julian received a shorter sentence for testifying against her. Elena visited Julian one last time in prison to tell him she forgave him, but she also made it clear that they could never have a future together. She told him that the quiet girl he had married died the night his mother tried to destroy her. Elena took over the company and began a total renovation, replacing the dark, secretive offices with bright glass and open spaces. She renamed the business to show that a new era of honesty had begun. A year later, she stood at a gala, finally at peace with her journey. Marcus was by her side, offering her a partnership based on mutual respect rather than control. Elena looked at a framed newspaper headline about the fall of the Thorne family and realized she was finally free. She had learned that a box of broken promises could be used to build an empire. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below where you are watching from.